Hello everybody, my name is Eric, and today we're going to be talking about and taking a look at the TikTok drama. Now, as you can see, because I'm using a US IP address right now, we can verify that. It is back. Seattle, Washington. And there we go. It works. But for a brief period yesterday, TikTok was actually down. So why was that? What happened? And what's the truth of all of this? Because it's a strange story. It's unusual, in fact unprecedented, for an app to be banned in any Western country. This is the type of thing. I mean, you can see the list of countries where TikTok is banned, and it's countries like Afghanistan, India, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is the north one, if you didn't know. Ironically, China itself, because the version of TikTok available in China is called Douyin, and very briefly, the United States. So what happened was there was a law that restricted, and we can find that. And I'm just going to play the following TikTok that I think encapsulates, well, the level of expertise and knowledge that went into crafting this legislation.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, I'm Singaporean. No.
Have you ever been associated or affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party?
No, Senator. Again, I'm Singaporean.
Mr. Chow, if I plug in my earphones into my phone while they're in my ear, can TikTok know what's going on in my brain, please?
Mr. Chu, does TikTok access the home Wi-Fi network?
Only if the user turns on the Wi-Fi. I'm sorry, I may not understand the...
So if I have TikTok app on my phone and my phone is on my home Wi-Fi network, does TikTok access that network?
It will have to access the network to get connections to the internet, if that's the question.
Is it possible then that it could access other devices on that home Wi-Fi network?
Congressman, we do not do anything that is beyond any industry norms.
Technically speaking, the weird thing is, because this happened last night at about 10 p.m. Eastern Time, for whatever reason, TikTok decided to put up a banner, this one, saying a law banning TikTok has been enacted in the United States. Unfortunately, this means you cannot use TikTok right now. We are fortunate that President Trump, who of course is scheduled at the time I'm recording this to be inaugurated in about a day, has said that he will work to reinstate TikTok. So presumptively what happens, if you believe what they're saying here, is that there was some sort of conversation that happened between that notice going up, where they were given assurances, because this law is still technically on the books. Trump has said recently, because of course originally he said he supported banning it, that he will sign a 90-day extension. And what I imagine will play out is that TikTok will have to, and they've already taken some steps to this, I think they call it Project Texas, keep the data of Americans in the United States and possibly implement some technical measures to make it more difficult for staff elsewhere to access that data. This is something, there are laws that do this in Europe right now, and I've always thought it's silly. Functionally, especially when you think about this in a literal sense, where data lives doesn't really mean it. Who can access that data is an important issue, and it's very, very hard to prove. Now, what I think is going to happen is there's some sort of partnership. There's a company called Oracle that most of you probably know. I think what's going to happen is there's a partnership with Oracle where TikTok US is going to be hosted on Oracle's cloud, and Oracle are going to provide some sort of monitoring service that will be able to audit whether anyone outside of the US is accessing Americans' data on TikTok. The other kind of funny thing that's happened throughout this whole thing is Americans have gone to a different Chinese platform. This is called RedNote, and RedNote is, now the website is Zhaohongshu. RedNote is an English name for this app, but the thing that is different about RedNote is, unlike TikTok, which is the Western version, it is completely separate. There is no federation between the TikTok app and the Douyin app, which is available in the mainland of China. RedNote, or Zhaohongshu, is available in China, and that's why most of the content we're seeing on here is in Chinese. And that means there's there's been a new trend on here where people have started creating a all of their things are in both languages. So we see My Life is Now Everything I Dreamed of in College, that written in Chinese. And this is from an account that appears to be someone based in mainland China. And we can scroll down, we can see more of that. And then here we have what looks like an American user who joined this platform a few days ago in the news. Now, of course, given that RedNote is owned by a Chinese company, in theory, the same law could apply, but it doesn't currently, and realistically, unless this app becomes massively popular, it probably won't. And there's the weird thing, because you probably think, well, how is this even allowed under the First Amendment? And the answer to that seems to be, while you can't ban an app, you can ban a foreign national from controlling an app, and as a result, you can use banning an app as a method to control that. So that seems to be how this happened. And here's how they, for whatever reason, they brought it back. There was probably some sort of conversation, and I think a big challenge is because if you actually read the law in question, a big part of the enforcement is anyone who aids and abets in letting Americans have TikTok could be fined an absolutely massive amount. You could be fined $5,000 per American that accesses TikTok. TikTok has 160 million American users. So we're talking about a fine that would be massive, bigger than any fine ever seen before. So that is why there's a lot of thought that just ignoring this law, or even ignoring this law on assurances, would be very dangerous because there is a risk of massive fines. So there must be some sort of agreement that protects this. And the other thing about this act is that it theoretically allows the president to ban any app, website, or anything like that has at least 1 million monthly active users, as long as it is operated by someone domiciled in, and the reason this wording is written this way is because TikTok is technically not Chinese. It's incorporated in Singapore, but the parent company, and there is a 20% ownership stake held by some meeting that requirement. Now, the list of foreign adversaries is available here, and we can see it's China, and then a bunch of countries that nobody would dispute are adversaries, like Venezuela, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea again, that's North Korea, Iran, Cuba. Now, nobody is really running apps of interest in any of these except Russia, but even then, the Telegram isn't affected currently. Now, the biggest issue I have with this, besides any potential freedom of speech or expression issue with banning apps, is claims made against TikTok are incredibly theoretical. Some of them are to do with the algorithm potentially boosting certain content. Now, unfortunately, that one has to go in an unknowable bin, because the reality is nobody, unless there was a complete forensic audit, because we're talking about server-side code. What is recommended to use? It's not something that can be reverse engineered and audited. There have been some studies that have tried to quantify this, and I think a lot of them are quite bad, like especially the claim that TikTok was systematically boosting pro-Palestine content rather than the possibility that the demographics of TikTok and Instagram simply differed on that issue. But there is a potential of that. And of course, there's misinformation and offensive content on the internet that is protected by the First Amendment, and it is the same on every platform. And then this is kind of the final one. And this is where the problem comes in, because there's very little evidence that what exactly is going on here. Some of the things you read about TikTok, it makes it sound like this is some extreme malware. And something worth noting is apps, because TikTok is predominantly an app, are subject to very different restrictions than desktop software, where it would be entirely reasonable that an app, like a desktop program, could do a lot of these things. Apps are permissioned, and a lot of this data probably wouldn't qualify as being that specific. Like, obviously, it collects user information. Everything collects IP addresses. In fact, it is impossible to use the internet without that. A mobile carrier is implicit. Maybe they are separately collecting that. Device identifiers. Now, that one could be a bit more concerning. Keystroke patterns and location data. Now, I do have a theory about why they might want that information, and I don't think it's particularly malicious, because there isn't a lot. Now, location data, I can see why that's sensitive. But other than that, these are not really that useful for evil purposes. So why might a company want to know these things? Well, there's a huge problem in some parts of the world where phone films are used to fraudulently generate revenue from these kind of platforms. It happens on YouTube, happens on Spotify, happens on TikTok. And they may be interested in trying to use machine learning to catch these. Now, ideally, and I think this is what they claim they're going to do, this would stay in the same country rather than the concern that it might be going overseas. I do think that if you, for whatever reason, have a genuine concern about the Chinese government, if you have some issue with them, or you're a journalist who covers stories that the Chinese government does not like, you should probably not use TikTok. I would say the same, and this is why on the other side of the world, Windows Defender and antivirus from the United States is not allowed on Chinese government computers. There is a general understanding here about that. And this is where there's a concern, is this being used for bad actions? Now, here's a study, and this is what I was expecting. TikTok did not collect data beyond industry norms, what is policy stated, or without additional user permission. Now let's see who this is. A Canadian company. It seems to be independent. And that makes sense. Some concerns. Now that would be very concerning, because there is a potential concern whenever you have an app that is controlled somewhere else, and that is that what is legal and seen as good or bad is different, and if that were leading to bias against protected groups, that would be a real problem, but it's not necessarily proven to be true. And then there is the concern about, because of the ownership structure, there could be extraterritorial implications of this law, but my counterpoint, and this is made by cybersecurity experts as well, is, but what are they going to do? It doesn't matter if the Chinese government, let's say, knows that you went to a Starbucks in Nebraska. What are they going to do? They can't extradite you, and there's not any evidence of this happening. Yeah, theoretically it could happen, but that's not really super great. And then there is apparently a master admin, and this could be, in fact, I would be utterly shocked if it wasn't true, but that's generally the standard. Came out, and some people were concerned to learn that Twitter employees can read Twitter DMs, and then the same now Elon Musk could read those DMs. But that's not necessarily abnormal, and I would always argue the better solution here is not banning apps from China, but instead trying to implement encryption so that that can't happen. And of course, you don't want TikTok, or any app for that matter, having information that is critical and should not be shared, but it's no reason really to believe this is happening. Then we got this, and I think this is what the solution will be. Ultimately, what will probably happen after the 90-day extension is TikTok will not divest. Like, economically, the money will still flow to ByteDance, but the control will be separated, and maybe there will need to be audits of that. But I don't think banning an app is a great idea, especially because it inhibits competition. There are currently, basically in the video space, there are two major platforms. There's YouTube, and there's a variety of things owned by Meta or Facebook, both owned by trillion-dollar companies. And having a third player in that is probably beneficial, I think, to creators. So that's my take. I should finish this by saying that I haven't personally really ever used TikTok. I don't really plan on it. I don't watch short-form video. I don't use Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts really either. I don't have an issue with it. So that's going to be all from me for now. This whole story is weird. The fact that it went and then it came back, and now it looks like it's going to be okay. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you use TikTok? Do you think that Chinese apps should be banned? That's all from me for now. Bye.